Yo guys, Vision SGN here bringing you more Marvel Rivals content. In today's video, I'll be bringing you the full Loki guide following the latest Season 1.5 update, breaking down all of his abilities, including his team up, and addressing his strengths and weaknesses. This is episode 12 of my new Heroes series guides, with all of the previous episodes on my channel, and on that note, let's get right into it. So Loki is known as the God of Mischief, an expert at deception, healing, and range damage, using both his clones and his scepter. His ultimate ability is capable of mirroring any of the other ultimates in this game, which makes him a very unique and powerful strategist who's commonly used throughout the game, especially in competitive where he thrives, and in that team up with the likes of Hela and Thor, he is super effective, but in competitive, he's one of the best healers in the game, one of the best damage dealing strategists in the game, and utilizing his deception, both his ultimate ability and his clones, makes him a real asset for a team. He's often used in a two strategist setup, so he's not usually the primary healer by any means, but as the secondary healer and with another healer on his team, such as Invisible Woman, Luna Snow, Cloak, you name it, he thrives and is commonly used in competitive at most ranks, and is probably one of the best, if not top 3 strategists in the game right now, following the latest update. Now, as for his stats, he has a standard base health of 250 and a standard movement speed of 6 meters per second, which is pretty much seen throughout all of the characters in the game for the most part. As for his abilities, he has his primary attack known as the Mystical Missile, which is where he fires his scepter that deals both damage and heals allies. His primary attack deals 30 damage per shot, applying splash damage on landing in a 3 meter radius. So it's really effective when you're in those sort of funneled and clustered areas where both your teammates and the enemy are all fighting, and you're going to be dealing both damage and healing allies in each shot. It has a 12 ammo count and has a shot speed of 1.75 per second, which is pretty slow and also doesn't deal any critical damage. So just hit and focus on those sort of larger areas of the players you're shooting at. And then of course for the healing, it heals for 40 health per cast, so you can really do a lot of heals in those areas as well as damage. Like I was saying, if you sort of focus on hitting the ground or hitting those larger areas in a 3 meter radius where you're going to be healing your teammates as well as dealing damage. As for his L1 ability, known as the Regeneration Domain, where he uses his rune stones to create a magical field that provides healing for allies and converts incoming damage into more healing, which is really useful and one of the best abilities in the game in my opinion. The spell field itself, also known as the healing pool that's on the ground, will be sustained during the runestone activation, so as long as they're in the air, the healing will constantly be applied when you're in this radius. Now, it will disappear if the runestones are destroyed, or as I mentioned, if the duration is reached. It has a 5-second duration, and also has a 100 health per second healing bonus. The runestones themselves have 100 health as well, so to destroy them, it actually takes quite a while, so more often than not, the duration is often exceeded rather than them being destroyed, because you have to have someone use maybe an ultimate or constantly focus on dealing damage to just them in order for them to be destroyed. So as you can see, this ability that is used every 25 seconds, has a cooldown 25 seconds, is really powerful because for the most part, you're going to be applying a lot of healing, and for the most part, other enemies are not going to be destroying those runestones, so they're just going to be sitting there in crucial spots, key areas where your teammates can back up and fall into, or on objective-based modes where you can put on this ability on the game mode, and that way your teammates are pretty much immortal during this ability activation. And it is worth mentioning that any teammates within the healing field, that spell field on the floor, will receive healing over time, not an instant heal by any means, but it deals 100 health per second, so 500 health over the 5-second duration, which is really crucial, and basically any damage you take during this will be converted into bonus healing based on the amount of damage that you take. So as you can see, as I mentioned, this is one of the best abilities in the game, because unless another team uses a ultimate ability to counter the likes of just this regular standard ability that you get every 25 seconds, you pretty much cannot defeat anyone whilst they're in this healing pool, making it one of the best and most clutch abilities in the game. Now, as for his R1 ability, the Doppelganger, this is where he projects an illusion of himself, and each of these illusions can cast some of his abilities. They last for 60 seconds and have a 100% damage and health output, so they also basically deal 30 damage per shot, just like with his scepter, and also have 250 base health, just like Loki himself. And they can be placed up to 30 meters away, and he has 2 charges of this, with each charge taking 12 seconds to recharge. So once it's gone, you can pretty much within 12 seconds place another one down, and then another 12 seconds go by, you can place another one. So as you can see, this is also a really useful ability because you can constantly deal 90 damage effectively if you line them all up pretty well, and you can shoot the same target. As well as this, you can also heal for 120 healing per second if you are targeting the same enemy or healing the same ally. And as well as this, Loki's circle ability, the Devious Exchange, allows him to swap with the selected illusion that he's looking at up to 30 meters away and can be done every 15 seconds. So as you can imagine, if you place these other clones of himself as you would like in key areas where you are able to either teleport upwards or somewhere safer, you can basically escape in any different area. And if you place them well, as you can imagine, this is where the character will thrive, as he can deal more damage, heal more allies, and escape when needed to, making him quite evasive as a character. And this generally is where I think the skill gap lies with the likes of Loki. So if you come across a really good version of this character, this is where he's able to use the R1 ability really well, placing his clones, placing his healing pools in clutch situations, as well as evading when needed to either back up and retreat and help keep his teammates alive, or deal range damage from distance using his clones, and then that way you are more impactful as a strategist. And then of course, combining the likes of his L2 ability, his Deception, where effectively Loki leaves an illusion in place and becomes invisible whilst continuously healing himself during this activation. This ability has no time limit, but if any actions other than casting the Devious Exchange or reloading happens, or casting the R1, the Doppelganger, this will basically make him visible and allow him to be killed. And whilst invisible, Loki actually heals for 20 health per second and has a 15-second cooldown once this ability is used and you become visible. As well as this, you can also utilize this to combine his R3 ability, his special melee attack known as the Backstab, which is very lore exclusive, and I really like this ability, where effectively you pull out a dagger to stab enemies in the back, dealing extra damage when attacking an enemy from behind. Initially, you will deal 30 damage when you backstab, or if you hit them directly in the back, you will deal a total of 45 damage, so an extra 15 for a direct melee attack to the back. And there's a 3-meter range, so you have to be really close quartered for this, but I think this is really cool. If you were to go invisible and then go behind and then stab someone in the back, you deal great damage, and it's also really good for then when you want to then disappear and teleport towards your other clone, and then that way you can deal range damage and just have a bit of a mixture between dealing range damage as well as being better and more deceptive from close range, which I think is really cool and makes this character more versatile and viable in competitive. And just generally speaking, I don't think a lot of players realize that most of these characters in this game have really cool melee combinations or attacks in general, so just learn this and make sure you're aware of these attacks. Now, as for his ultimate ability, which is the main ability that this character is known for and is where he's really effective, where it's called the God of Mischief, where you are able to shapeshift into any target ally or enemy, and you can use their abilities except for their team up abilities, of course. But this ability has a 15-second duration and costs 4,000 energy, which is fairly expensive across the board, but is a really effective ability. And especially when you're in a 2 support setup where you only have one main healing ult, you can effectively then mirror the likes of a Lunar Snow or an Invisible Woman or a Cloak and Dagger to gain that ult and get 2 of them in a game, which is really clutch, and as I mentioned, makes him a very viable second support in this game and in this current meta. Now, as for his team up ability, when Hela lands a final hit and defeats an enemy, she instantly resurrects the likes of Loki and Thor in the respawn phase, or if they're still alive, grants them with bonus health. So for Loki, he gains a 50 bonus health. This team up is called the Laufey Sun Reborn, and in my opinion, this is one of the best team up abilities in the game. I've actually just made a separate video on my channel naming the top 5 best team up abilities in the entire game right now as of the latest update, so be sure to go check that out for you to be fully aware of who the best heroes and combinations are in the game. So as a whole, as a quick summary of this character and Loki in general, he is one of the best supports in the entire game. Certain maps suit him more, of course, but when he's able to set up from range with his clones and place his healing pools in power spots or in clutch situations, he is definitely one of the best in the game in my opinion. But it's definitely worth being aware of when you wouldn't want to use Loki, and there's only real 2 reasons why I wouldn't. The main one being, if the other team has a Winter Soldier, I would advise not using Loki, purely because his clones actually allow the Winter Soldier to continuously use his ultimate, the Kraken Impact, which is the notorious again that we all hate and hear in the game. And if you keep hearing that noise over and over again, and you're the reason you're feeding that ultimate and allowing it to extend, then it's really just going to be putting your team at a disadvantage, so I'd highly advise not doing that. And then the second reason would be if Loki is the main healer and you have an Adam Warlock on your team, or a Jeff, someone that's not as versatile at healing, and of course the ultimate mainly being the mirror, that's where you want to consider not using Loki, because if you don't have a healing ultimate, a defensive focused ultimate such as Luna, Invis, or Cloak maybe, or Mantis, then you definitely want to consider that with who you have and why you have this setup, because you're going to struggle without those defensive ultimates, as they are pretty much the game changing moments in most of these games in this current meta, because anytime one of these heroes pulls out their healing ultimates, that is when a team is able to break out a spawn trap or capture an objective, and it completely changes the pace of a game. So it's worth just being mindful of these things when you're picking Loki, but in a more casual environment, it is not so much of a big deal. It's just being aware that you're not going to get the best possible heals and also going to lack that healing ultimate. But anyways, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know down below if you have any comments or alterations or any tips and tricks that you've learned along the way to using Loki. I'm Visionist Gen, and I'll see you in the next one.